UFC Fight Night, Lemos versus Jandiroba from the UFC Apex this Saturday night in Las Vegas, Nevada. We've got 12 fights on this card, of course, main evented by the strawweight bout between Amanda Lemos and Vina Jandiroba, two fighters in the top 5 of the UFC's strawweight division. Real quick, last week we went 8-3 on that UFC Denver card with Rose Namajunas and Tracy Cortez in the main event, so looking to move on to this week with that same success with this card from the Apex. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. We do one of these every single week, and now we'll start things off on this card with Usman taking on Thomas Peterson. For Thomas Peterson, this is a guy who lost his first fight in the UFC to Jamal Pogues. So again, this is a UFC Apex card, so let's just set the stage right now. Some of these are not going to be the best fights, just because, again, they are in the Apex. These are fighters who, again, they're fighting in the Apex for a reason. This is why they didn't fight in Denver last week. On that card, on paper, wasn't very good. It turned out to be pretty good with John Silva, obviously, and Drew Dober. But anyways, again, there's a reason these guys are not fighting in front of crowds, right? Usman's been in the UFC for 2 years now, 2.5 years now. No, actually 2 years now, but still, he's been in the UFC for 2 years, and he has not fought in front of a crowd yet. Again, there's a reason for that. Now, Usman did pick up a knockout victory in his first fight in the UFC when he beat Zach Pounga to win the Ultimate Fighter, but then back-to-back victories over Junior Tafa and Jake Collier, and then a loss to Mick Parkin in his last bout, where Parkin just kind of beat him to the punch every single time on the feet. He's getting Thomas Peterson now instead in his next bout here, and Peterson lost to Jamal Pogues. I don't think the highest to Jamal Pogues. Peterson, for the most part, is going to look to get fights on the ground. That's what we saw him do a lot recently coming into the UFC. We saw that in his fight in the Contender Series, where he's able to go out there and submit Chandler Cole. Now, that is his only submission victory in his entire professional mixed martial arts career. But still, what you saw Peterson do prior to fighting in the UFC in the Contender Series, he got fights down on the ground. He ended up winning them with his punches and TKO, or getting the TKO with punches on the ground. He's got a loss back in 2022 to a UFC fighter in Waldo Cortez Acosta. He lost the LFA Flyweight Championship fight to Cortez Acosta in the 3rd round. But since then, 3 straight victories, not against the best fighters, like even Chandler Cole, I never thought was the greatest. That was the guy who fought on the Ultimate Fighter and lost to Jordan Heiderman. I didn't think that was the greatest win. Yes, again, Peterson was a minus 750 favorite in that fight, and he ended up winning the fight, obviously. But again, just didn't show me the most in that one for Peterson. Because, yeah, again, he did what he was supposed to do to Cole. In the Jamal Pogues fight, he couldn't get the fight down. He got outstruck. Usman's a guy who is very power dependent, sure, but he has been able to go in there and win back and forth striking fights. Say what you want about the Jake Collier fight. Did he win it? Did he not? I don't know. The swing round is the 2nd round in that fight. Again, though, Usman is able to go in there and trade. He does have the wrestling, too, if he needs it, right? Again, that played a huge factor in the Junior Tafa fight, right? Usman really couldn't do much in the striking game in that fight, but again, he was able to win that fight with his wrestling. And yeah, he got outstruck by Mick Parkin, but when you look at it again, he should be able to go out there and beat Thomas Peterson. I don't think Peterson's able to take Usman down. Usman is huge for the weight class. Not in terms of weight, per se, right? I think he weighed in around like 240 his last fight. And so, okay, again, Peterson's going to be the bigger fighter, but in terms of strength, I don't think Peterson's able to muscle Usman down consistently. Sure, he might be able to get it done a couple times, but if he's having trouble taking down Jamal Pogues, I think he's going to have a lot of trouble taking down Muhammad Usman. With that being said, I think Muhammad Usman wins the fight because, again, I do think you see primarily a striking fight in this one. And I think Usman is going to find his way to a decision victory. He does have the power, sure, right? He was able to knock out Pounga, but that's his only knockout victory in the UFC. I would be a little bit concerned with the grappling game out of Usman, right? Like, Brandon Sales in the PFL was able to take him down and submit him, and Brandon Sales was not the best PFL heavyweight. I just think, again, Usman has evolved since joining the UFC, and I just don't think Thomas Peterson's very good. So give me Muhammad Usman to win the fight. I think you see him keep the fight on the feet with Peterson, and then I think you really just see Usman outstrike him. So we're going to take Muhammad Usman to win here in our heavyweight opener on this card, and now we will go on to the women's flyweight division. We have got Lucia Pudilova taking on Luana Carolina. I'm very surprised Luana Carolina is an underdog in this fight. She's coming out around plus 100 compared to Pudilova's -120. Pudilova, coming in from the Czech Republic, now training in Dublin, Ireland, is 3-7 in the UFC. Again, that is through 2 different appearances or 2 different stints in the UFC, but her second stint in the promotion, 1-2, a win over Wu Yanan, but back-to-back losses to Jocelyn Edwards and to Aline Perez in her last fight. The Edwards fight was close. It was in Kansas City. Again, Edwards barely got the nod. Pudilova tried grappling with Edwards, tried getting her to the ground. That's what she was able to do successfully in the first couple rounds. However, that first round they still gave to Jocelyn Edwards. Third round, again, Pudilova couldn't get the fight down, so Edwards went out there and outstruck her. Close fight, right? The swing round is the first. Her last fight against Aline Perez, Perez wins it. Again, Perez was just dominant on the ground. She was able to get Lucia Pudilova down and just control her. But when you look at pure UFC fights, Lucia Pudilova is 1-5 in her last 6 UFC fights. It's not good. It is not good. 1-6, I think, actually. She went to Octagon. She went over there. She won a couple fights. The only loss being to Talita Bernardo by unanimous decision back in 2021. But Pudilova did all right outside the UFC. However, again, it's still been I wouldn't even say a mixed bag of results. It's been bad for Pudilova since coming back to the UFC. Yes, 1-2, but again, the Wu Yanan victory, and, you know, credit to her. She went out there, she got the finish against Wu Yanan. I just don't think Wu Yanan's very good. Now, for Luana Carolina, back-to-back victories and a good win in her last fight, right, being Julia Stolyarenko, getting the finish late in that third round against Stolyarenko. It was domination on that Dolidze Imavov card earlier this year, and before that, beating Ivana Petrovic by unanimous decision. Petrovic, a fighter who was undefeated at the time. Luana Carolina was coming into that fight around a 2-1 underdog. She's able to go out there and pick up the win by decision in that fight. Before that, dropping a very close fight to Joanne Wood. I thought she did lose that fight. And then before that, she got spinning back elbowed by Molly McCann. But I do think Luana Carolina is the better fighter in this fight, right? I don't think Pudilova is able to see a lot of success in the ground. Now, okay, Julia Stolyarenko, this is the problem we have with her, right? Very good grappler. She has trouble getting fights to the ground, and sometimes she just gets stuck on her back in fights, right? There's some other fights, too, where she will get taken down, like the Jessica Rose Clark fight, and she'll throw up an armbar and she'll win, right? It happens, and, you know, she can win fights in the ground. She can also just get dominated and get stuck on her back the entire fight. Luana Carolina was able to put Stolyarenko on her back and was able to avoid getting stuck in submissions. I think Luana Carolina is able to get Lucia Pudilova down. I think she's able to do the same thing. Not to say Pudilova is that submission threat that Stolyarenko is. Obviously, she's not, right? Again, Stolyarenko is like 9 finishes by armbar in her professional mixed martial arts career. Again, I don't think anyone is thinking that Pudilova is that. Pudilova, by the way, a fighter who's lost by decision 8 times before in her mixed martial arts career. But I think Carolina is able to use the wrestling. I think she's able to get on top of Pudilova, and I think she's able to give her problems. Again, Aline Perez was able to do the same thing. And on the feet, too, I do like Luana Carolina better as well. Yes, she got knocked out by Molly McCann, so some people are going to point to that being, okay, yes, Luana Carolina's not that good of a striker. I'll go back to the Ivana Petrovic fight, right? Like, again, when the fight was on the feet, Luana Carolina was winning. That's what won her that third round to end up winning that fight. So, again, I like Carolina in spots in this fight. Am I overly confident in this one? No. But we are going to take the underdog in this fight. We're going to take Luana Carolina to win the fight by unanimous decision. I don't think this fight is, I don't think the odds are set right in this one. I think, again, by the end of the week, I do think Luana Carolina is going to be a favorite. Just because, again, I don't think a 3-7 fighter in the UFC should be a favorite, especially in this fight where matchup-wise, it appears that Carolina is the better fighter. But we'll see what happens. I'm taking Luana Carolina to win. I think she wins in the ground and she wins in the feet. I'm taking Luana Carolina by unanimous decision. To our next one here, we got a good fight in the lightweight division. Luik Radzhabov taking on Trey Ogden. For Radzhabov coming at it, Tajikistan, now fighting out of Killcliff FC. I believe he's out of Killcliff. 18-5-1 as a professional, 2-1 in the UFC. A big win in his last one over Abdul Karim Al-Salwadi, winning that fight by knockout in the third round. I believe that fight was 1-1 going to the third, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was, yeah. Al-Salwadi won the second, Radzhabov won the first, and Radzhabov ended up getting the finish in the third round, showcasing the power that he does possess, right? The guy, just look at him again, a very physically strong guy, getting Trey Ogden in this fight, and, it's kind of just a clash of styles here. Like, yeah, Radzhabov isn't bad on the ground, he's actually pretty good down there, in all fairness. But I think in this fight, again, Radzhabov's going to try to keep this fight on the feet. Ogden's going to try to get it on the ground. I feel like it's kind of simple on how we can portray this fight, right? Hell, look at Trey Ogden's last fight over Kurt Holobaugh. Now, it is ridiculous also that Kurt Hollobaugh's on the main card of this fight card. Trey Ogden beat him 30-27 in his last fight just a couple months ago, and Ogden's here on the prelims, and Hollobaugh's on the main card. But it is what it is. Trey Ogden dominated Kurt Holobaugh in that fight. Again, it was over 11 minutes of control time in that fight for Trey Ogden on the ground. 3 takedowns is all that it took. Again, 1 in each round. That's all that it took for Trey Ogden to go out there and win the fight. And I don't think Radzhabov really wants, too much. I don't think he wants too much in part in that, right? Because again, I think the easiest pathway to success for him in this fight is going to be the striking. Yeah, Radzhabov can grapple, he can wrestle too, but just in this matchup, I do think it's better for him to keep the fight on the feet against a guy in Ogden who, again, I wouldn't say it's one-dimensional, right? I watched this guy go out there and outstrike Daniel Zellhuber to victory back in 2022, right? Again, Ogden looked for a million takedowns, he didn't get him, but still on the feet, Ogden won in spots in that fight. Zellhuber, first fight in the UFC, I do believe it was his first fight, was a little hesitant on pulling the trigger, and Ogden was able to go out there and win. Not to say, again, if they rematched, I think Zellhuber would beat him, but I've seen Ogden be on the feet before too, right? Ignacio Bahamondes was able to beat him on the feet, right? He was dominating Nicolas Mota before the fight got stopped, right? The Kurt Holobaugh fight, again, was dominating on the ground. I think for Radzhabov, the fighter from Tajikistan here should have the advantage on the feet. And not to say, again, Rabadanov, I always butcher his name, does say he can't go out there and wrestle, right? You look at his UFC debut against Esteban Ribovic, 11 takedowns in that fight. Still, though, I do think the striking game, like we saw in his last fight, and the power that he showed in that fight will be enough to go out here and win this fight. I think you will see him mix it up on the ground. I wouldn't be surprised also if Radzhabov goes out there and shoots for a takedown, because again, if you can put Ogden on his back, I'm not too concerned about Ogden throwing up something. It's a weird comparison. Again, we just talked about it. Like Julia Stolyarenko, right? I wouldn't be too concerned with Radzhabov getting stuck in something like that. So all around, again, whether it be Radzhabov outstriking Trey Ogden or whether it be him, again, approaching this fight kind of like he did in the Esteban Ribovic fight back at UFC 285, I do think the Tajik tank, the fighter coming out of Tajikistan is able to go out here and pick up the victory. I'm going to take the -150 favorite here in Luik Radzhabov to win this fight by unanimous decision. I just don't think Ogden's able to get much going. We'll see if Radzhabov, again, does threaten with the takedown. I do anticipate Ogden being the one to, threaten with that, but I do think Radzhabov is able to keep the fight on the feet, and I think he's able to go out there and outstrike Ogden, and if he needs to, again, to mix it up, I think he can go out there and I wouldn't say out-wrestle Ogden, but just mix it up, again, make Ogden fearful of the wrestling if it seems like, again, Radzhabov is just striking with him. If he needs to switch it up, I think he can, so that's what I'm going to go with the Tajik tank to win this fight by unanimous decision. We go back to the women's weight classes here at 125. We have got Miranda Maverick taking on Diony Barbosa. Maverick here for her 10th UFC fight, taking on Barbosa, which it will be Diony Barbosa's second UFC fight. We're going to talk about the fighter out of Brazil here, Diony Barbosa, 7-2 professionally, but again, 1-0 in the UFC. It was that last victory against Ernesta Cadicate, beating her by unanimous decision at UFC 301 over in Brazil. And Barbosa kind of did what you'd expect her to do, right? Win rounds with her grappling, and again, make it competitive on the feet for as long as it does need to last up there. Very close fight. I think you can really make the case Cadicate wins that fight. I would give the second round again, though, to Diony Barbosa, but it's a close fight. Barbosa is running out of gas in that third round, right? She goes 0-for-6 on her takedowns. I'll be honest, I think this fight is very one-sided, though, and I think it's a very lopsided, fight in general. I think Miranda Maverick is a lot better than Diony Barbosa, right? Maverick's won 4 out of 5. The only loss being to Jasmine Jasvidius, who we just saw win her last fight last night. Maverick coming off a unanimous decision victory in Anaheim over Andrea Lee, beats Priscilla Cachoeira in Utah before that by armbar, right? The loss to Jasvidius, back-to-back wins over Sabina Mazo and Shanna Young. Again, don't forget how different the career trajectory could have been for Miranda Maverick if she gets that split decision nod over Macy Barber back in 2021. She arguably should have got that. Again, I know she lost to Erin Blanchfield right afterwards, but still, Maverick, again, is a very capable fighter, and I think Diony Barbosa is going to have a very hard time dealing with that offensive wrestling pressure of Maverick and also just the striking game, too. Because, again, Barbosa was getting outstruck by Cadicate, and not to say, again, that Miranda Maverick is the best striker. She is not. She will get outstruck by better strikers, but against a primary BJJ player in Diony Barbosa, she should have the advantage on the feet. By far, she should. And even on the ground, too. I'm not too concerned with Diony Barbosa submitting Miranda Maverick. Really? I think this is so one-sided in terms of, in the favor of Miranda Maverick. Because, again, I don't think Barbosa is able to submit her off her back. I don't think so. I think the only way Diony Barbosa wins this fight is if she gets a takedown and she puts Miranda Maverick on her back. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think it is. Maverick's takedown defense rate isn't the best in the UFC. But still, she's been able to pop right back up to her feet when she has been taken down. I will look at the Andrea Lee fight. And the reason why, again, like her takedown defense rate's at 40% in the UFC is because of the Erin Blanchfield fight, because Blanchfield took her down 7 times on 8 attempts and held her down for 12 minutes. But that's, again, just a different fighter, right? Erin Blanchfield, say what you want about her after her loss in Atlantic City to Manon Fior, she's still a top 5 fighter in the 125-pound weight class. So, again, and she's arguably the best wrestler in the weight class, too. I understand she was not able to get Manon Fior down. We will see how she adjusts, and I think, and I would anticipate her fighting someone like Rose Namajunas next. I think that would make sense. Or hell, Macy Barber could work, too. I don't know. But still, right, that's who Erin Blanchfield is, and that's what she does. So I wouldn't be, too, turned away from picking Miranda Maverick against Deone Barbosa, because that's what Erin Blanchfield did to her. Hell, I don't think many fighters can do what Erin Blanchfield does in there, especially not Deone Barbosa, who's had one fight in the UFC, struggled some with Ernesta Katakate. I understand she has grappling and she's got submission skills. And yes, again, I understand she submitted Rain Guerrero from her back with an armbar back in the Contender Series, but still, Miranda Maverick is a fighter, again, who's making her 10th walk in the UFC octagon. She has been there, she has done that, she has fought very good grapplers like Erin Blanchfield and did not get submitted. I don't think she gets submitted by Deone Barbosa. I think Miranda Maverick's the one putting the pedal to the metal, and I think she's able to go out there and just push a pace and put a pace on Deone Barbosa and win this fight by unanimous decision. I will not call it a lock because women's MMA, again, is tricky sometimes, but this feels as close to a lock as you can get in women's MMA. I'm taking Miranda Maverick to beat Deone Barbosa. We're taking her to win this fight by unanimous decision. We go on to our next one here. It's Brian Kelleher taking on Cody Gibson in the bantamweight division. I'll be honest with you. For the most part, I have an idea. Well, yeah, for like 90% of the fights I pick, I have an idea of who I'm going to pick going into the video, right? Like, yes, I talk about it, and I will give you my breakdown of the fight. But there's some fights where I look at the card when I'm making the graphics, and I'm just like, I don't know who's gonna win this one. And this, honestly, is one of these fights. Cody Gibson, Brian Kelleher, it's one of these fights where I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I'll be honest with you, again, every other fight in this card, except for one, we'll talk about it later, I'll look at the fight and I'll be like, all right, I think he's going to win. And again, I'll look at the fight, I'll go in more in depth into it, but still, I will have an idea when I'm looking at the fight who I think is going to win. This is one of them where I'm just, I don't know. Cody Gibson's 1-5 in the UFC. I understand he came back from the Ultimate Fighter, right? He's 0-2 in his second stint. He has to win this fight to remain in the UFC. Back-to-back losses to Brad Katona and Miles Johns so far in this second stint in the promotion. And then you got Brian Kelleher, who, again, has not won a fight in, I believe, 2.5 years. He has not won a fight since January of 2022 against Kevin Kroom. And before that, he beat Domingo Pilarte, right? Like, just not good fighters. His losses, Cody Garbrandt, Mario Bautista, Umar Nurmagomedov. Again, good fighters, but fights that Brian Kelleher has looked horrible in. He has not gotten out of the first round with any of those guys. And now you give him Cody Gibson, who, okay, Cody Gibson's fight against Miles Johns. Just not much happened. Miles Johns won every single round. He outstruck Cody Gibson. It was a very slow-paced fight. Johns got him down, he controlled him, nothing much happened. It was very similar in all fairness, a little bit more wrestling in this fight, but still, very similar to the fight that Johns had with Douglas Silva de Andrade. Wasn't very good. Cody Gibson's fight against Brad Katona was excellent. It was a back-and-forth war on the feet. It won Fight of the Night, UFC 292 in Boston. Sterling O'Malley, tremendous fight, right? Cody Gibson had Brad Katona on the ropes at some points in that fight, but in the end, and ultimately, Brad Katona ended up winning that fight. I thought he took the second and third rounds to end up getting the decision. Gibson looked good in that fight, but again, he got completely neutralized against Miles Johns. I don't know if he was a little bit concerned about the power coming back at him with Miles Johns, because yes, Johns does throw very hard. I don't know what it was, but there's that, right? He didn't really look like the same guy in the Miles Johns fight that he did in his fight for the Ultimate Fighter against Katona. And again, Katona is expected to go out there and beat Gibson, but man, I just don't know, because Cody Gibson, again, the Ultimate Fighter fights are technically amateur bouts, right? So in professional fights for Cody Gibson, he's lost 3 of 4 going into this one. He lost in Eagle FC to Ray Borg. He won a fight against Francisco Rivera, got into the Ultimate Fighter, won back-to-back fights, lost to Katona, lost to Miles Johns. But then on the flip side, we've got Brian Kelleher, who the last time Kelleher beat a fighter who's still in the UFC, it's Odi Osbourne back at UFC 246 in 2020. But oh, by the way, Odi Osbourne's a 125-pounder who went up to 135 to take the fight at short notice. That's the last time Brian Kelleher has beat a fighter currently in the UFC. 2020. Yeah. And again, Kelleher's lost to good guys though, so this is what makes it really confusing. He's looked bad in these fights, but he hasn't lost to a bad fighter, right? Garbrandt, Bautista, Umar Nurmagomedov, Ricky Simone, Cody Stamen, Montel Jackson. Like, those are the guys he's lost to. Hell, you want to go back to even before that, John Lineker back in 2018? 2018, and then Marlon Vera back in 2017, right? Like, it's just, he doesn't lose to bad guys, and he beats guys he's supposed to be at the same time. However, how much is it that, again, Brian Kelleher is, losing to good fighters, or he's 37, he's getting up there in age, he's not, again, the same fighter he used to be, and oh, by the way, he's also he happens to be losing to good guys as well. I think it's more of that. Brian Kelleher is going to be 38 in August, and again, Cody Gibson is 36 currently, so that's not saying much. But Kelleher's getting up there in age, and when you look at this fight matchup-wise, Cody Gibson's going to be so much bigger than Brian Kelleher going into this fight. I think Cody Gibson's able to use his range, and yes, again, Cody Gibson's last win in the UFC came 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, back in 2014. It's been that long since he's won a fight. He won a fight by first-round knockout on a UFC Fight Night card, main evented by Cub Swanson and Jeremy Stevens. That's how long it's been since Cody Gibson's won a fight in the UFC. However, I think this fight does favor him a lot. I think, again, the reach is going to play a big factor on the feet and also on the ground, too. I think, again, Gibson, I will say, is the better wrestler, and I think on the feet, too, he's the better striker. I don't know, really, what Brian Kelleher does all that well at this point of his career. I'll just be honest with you. Again, he hasn't beat a UFC caliber fighter since January of 2020. That was before the pandemic started. That's how long it's been, and it's Odi Osbourne. Don't get me wrong, I love Odi Osbourne, the Picasso of MMA. I love the guy. But again, that's Odi Osbourne up 10 pounds in weight, and that was Odi Osbourne's UFC debut on short notice. Again, I can't pick Brian Kelleher in the spot. I'm going to take Cody Gibson coming out of, I believe, St. Louis Obispo, California. I will take Cody Gibson to win the fight. I'm going to take him by decision. I think Gibson, again, I think we see somewhat of the guy that we saw in the fight with Katona. I think he kind of just puts a pace on Kelleher, uses his reach, keeps his distance against Kelleher, avoids the wrestling threat of Kelleher, because I do think that's what Kelleher is going to come out and try to do in this fight. So I think, again, Gibson keeps his range and he wins the fight. I'm going to take Cody Gibson, California's own, to win this fight by unanimous decision. To our next fight here, we have got the first of, I believe, 3 Korean fighters on this card. Jeong Young Lee taking on Haider Amil in this one. Actually, first of 4. So again, when I was looking at this card too, was this originally supposed to be in Korea? I don't know. They haven't been in Korea in a minute. But I guess you can't main event Amanda Lemos and Vina Jandiroba. Actually, you probably can in Korea at this point, because again, the UFC just sold out the Colorado Avalanche's arena, or the Denver Nuggets, whatever, the Ball Arena. They just sold that thing out in Denver with Rose Namajunas and Tracy Cortez in the main event. They had about $1 million gate on that card. You probably could put this card in South Korea too, and it would sell just off the backs of Junyoung Park, Sungwoo Choi, Doohoo Choi, the Korean Superboy, and of course the fighter in this fight, Jeong Young Lee. So it's weird. Again, you got 4 Korean fighters on this card, but you got Jeong Young Lee taking on Haider Amil in this one. Amil is undefeated at 9-0. This is a guy who fought in Bellator at one point, but now in the UFC, right after winning the Contender Series, he beat Fernie Garcia in his first fight in the UFC by second round at TKO. I mean, it was expected, I'll be honest. Again, Amil is supposed to go out there and beat Fernie Garcia. I guess. I mean, I picked Amil to win the fight. I just checked the odds for that fight. I'm surprised that Amil was the underdog in that fight. Anyways, I picked Amil to win the fight. At least I expected him to win that one. But he gets Jeong Young Lee in this fight, which is a tough out, I will say. Again, this is a guy, 28 years old, 2-0 in the UFC. He won on the road to UFC finals against Yiza by split decision back in early 2023. It was a close fight-ish. His opponent takes him down, but really does nothing with it. So Lee is just able to go out there and outstrike him, win the fight with standing, but on the ground, Yiza is able to outgrapple him. It's kind of a weird fight. It's horrible. It's not, I wouldn't say it's horrible. It's just not a good fight. But his last fight against Blake Builder was better, right? He goes out there, shows a mixture of the striking and the grappling, wins every single round in that fight with Builder on the Dolidze and Imavov card earlier this year. He will now get Haider Amil, who again looked good in his last fight, dominated Fernie Garcia on the feet. But again, I feel like that was somewhat expected, but his striking game looked very good in that one. I'm concerned with the wrestling in this fight for Haider Amil. You look back at his Contender Series fight, his opponent was very just, very one-dimensional in that one. We're talking about Amara Sonmez, coming out of Turkey. This is a guy who's 14-5 now professionally. He fought Haider Amil and he shot 23 takedowns in that fight. He went 5 for 23. He was still able to get Haider Amil down at points. Again, I don't truly know how good this guy is. You look at what this dude did before the UFC, fought in Cage Warriors, but really hadn't beat anybody all that great. So I don't really know how to rate that win. And really, how do we really rate Haider Amil and Fernie Garcia? Fernie Garcia went 0-4 in the UFC. So again, expected. I don't know how Fernie Garcia was a favorite going into that fight, but again, it is what it is, right? I think Jiang Lee probably wins this fight. Again, Amil hasn't fought the best of competition yet. I think you get a guy in Lee who is going to be willing to scrap with him on the feet, and at the same time, I think he will be able to, change levels and get this fight down. I think all around the better fighter is the Korean Tiger here in Jiang Lee. I like his wrestling. I like his striking, just better than Haider Amil. And I do think he's quicker too. I think, again, he's the much younger fighter by about 7 years. I believe he's 7 years younger than Amil, 7'6". I think, 6 years younger. I just think he's quicker. I think he's got an all-around better game. And I do like Jiang Lee to win it, to go out here and win this fight. He was very impressive in the road to the UFC, right? Back-to-back finishes in the first round, one by armbar in 36 seconds, the other by knockout in 42 seconds. He's able to go out there and sprint. Again, though, against better competition, I think it will take him more time. And I think again, I don't think he's able to get the finish against Amil, a guy who is undefeated professionally. I think he goes out there, though, and wins this fight by decision. I hate to say it, I hate to bring it up, but again, it's something that you have to at least, have in the back of your mind. These fights are in the Apex. Guys just fight a little bit different when they're in the Apex compared to, again, for example, Denver in an arena full of 12,000, 13,000 fans. Just because, again, instead of 13,000 fans, there's 100 people, and it just doesn't feel like a completely, crazy fight environment. So guys don't fight as hard sometimes. I know they're still trying to win, but it just takes a different element out of the fight. I'm not saying this specifically is the fight that's going to be different, but I'm just saying, again, just keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about decisions for this card, because I have picked a lot of decisions so far, and only decisions, but it's an Apex card. That's kind of why these guys are in the Apex. Give me Jiang Lee to go out here and win this fight. We're going to take him by unanimous decision. We go on to our next one here, on to the main card. This one should be fireworks. Doo-Hoo Choi takes on Bill Algeo here in the featherweight division. Now, Doo-Hoo Choi, tremendous fighter. I believe he's in the UFC Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure they inducted his fight with Cub Swanson. I think. I will check right now. I believe he is in the Hall of Fame for his fight with Cub Swanson. Crazy fight. If it's not in the Hall of Fame yet, it should be eventually. Yeah, it is. 2022, they put it in. Tremendous fight. Cub Swanson wins it at UFC 206 in Canada. I believe that fight was in Canada. Yeah. Holloway Pettis. Tremendous fight. Go watch it. One of the better fights you're ever going to watch, right? But Cub Swanson wins it. Guys, Doo-Hoo Choi hasn't won a fight since 2016, though. And I know he was off for years, right? He was injured. I believe he had military service, too. Like the Zombie, I could be mistaken on that. I know he's been injured. But Doo-Hoo Choi hasn't won a fight again since 2016. Last time he won a fight was the Ultimate Fighter Season 23 finale. That was Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Claudia Gadelha coaching that Ultimate Fighter season. That's when Tatiana Suarez won the Ultimate Fighter, and that's when Andrew Sanchez won the Ultimate Fighter against Khalil Roundtree Jr. That was the last time Doo-Hoo Choi won a fight. It was a knockout victory, first round knockout victory over Thiago Tavares. Since then, again, he had the amazing fight with Cub Swanson, but then he lost to Jeremy Stevens in another good fight, but he lost in the second round. And then he fought another very good fight against Charles Air Jordan, one fight of the night, but lost it in South Korea in Busan on the last card of 2019. Then his last fight again, had a draw against Kyle Nelson. Doo Ho Choi won on the feet. Kyle Nelson won on the ground. It ended up being a draw. When you look at the final scorecards, 28-28 on 2 cards, 29-27. I do believe it being scored for Kyle Nelson. But again, that was over a year ago since Doo Ho Choi has fought. That was about 18 months ago now. Again, a lot can happen in 18 months. You can do a lot of things in 18 months, and a lot of things will be different after those 18 months. And that's where Doo Ho Choi is now. Again, I don't know what Doo Ho Choi is 18 months later after this fight. He's been off a lot. He's only 33 years old. He's only had 7 fights in the UFC, and he's taking on a very tough out in Bill Algeo. Now, if you want to play MMA math, Doo Ho Choi had a draw against Kyle Nelson. Bill Algeo got knocked out against Kyle Nelson. However, I really don't think that applies too much. Now, I'm a little bit concerned with Bill Algeo just getting knocked out 4 months ago. Okay, right? That's when he lost to Nelson. Did he really get knocked out? It was an early stoppage. You know, I was a little mad I had money on it. But still, right? It's a back and forth fight in the feet. Yeah, is Algeo trying to get a word out, wobbled? Sure. But should the fight have been stopped? No, I don't think so. Algeo was still in it. The fight got stopped pretty early. So I'm not too concerned about Bill Algeo because, again, it's not like he got knocked out cold. He just got wobbled. It's been 4 months. It should be fine. I don't think his chin is going to be, you know, less than it. I mean, it might be a little bit, like, the chin might be not as good as it could be, but I don't think it's going to play a huge factor in this fight with Doo Ho Choi. I really liked Bill Algeo's performance against Alexander Hernandez, right? I believe it was a co-main event. He won that fight by decision. He knocks down Alexander Hernandez in that one. He looked really good in that fight, right? Beat TJ Brown, submitted him in the second round. Had a very close fight with Andre Touchy-Feely that he lost by split decision. Made Herbert Burns quit on Long Island in 2022. Has a big win over Joe Anderson Breathrough that keeps on aging well back in January of 2022 in Breathrough's, I believe, UFC debut. So I like Bill Algeo a lot. I think he's got a really good striking game. Primarily a striker. You will see a little bit of wrestling out of him. But Doo Ho Choi, again, he's going to stand up there and he's going to stand and strike too. This has all the makings of fight of the night. It probably will win fight of the night. Both these guys are going to be willing to go to war. And someone might get knocked out. I don't know. I'm actually going to pick a decision. I'm picking Bill Algeo, so that's when I'm going to take a decision. I think Doo Ho Choi wins. He might knock Algeo out. But Algeo doesn't hit the hardest. He really doesn't. But he is willing to get into firefights in the feet and just put it on guys. And I think that's kind of what he's going to do to Doo Ho Choi. I like Doo Ho Choi a lot. But again, guys have been able to put pressure on Doo Ho Choi and beat him. They've all been fight of the nights. Cub Swanson, Jeremy Stevens, Charles Jordan. They were all fight of the nights. But what did those 3 guys do? They put pressure on Doo Ho Choi and they overwhelmed him. And again, Doo Ho Choi was in all of those fights. And he was swinging back too. But he ended up losing all 3 of those fights. I think Bill Algeo puts him in a bad spot in this fight, and I think he pressures a lot, uses his striking, and just gets in his face. I'm taking Bill Algeo to win this fight. He knows what he signed up for when taking a fight with the Korean Superboy and Doo Ho Choi. You know what style of fight Doo Ho Choi wants to fight. It's going to be a war on the feet. Algeo is well prepared for that, and I think Algeo does go out here and win this fight. I'm taking Senor Perfecto to beat Doo Ho Choi. We're going to take him to win this fight by unanimous decision. This is going to be straight kickboxing. I don't think Algeo is going to get caught in something big early in the fight, similar to what happened in the Kyle Nelson fight. I think he's able to stay in there and end up winning this fight. It kind of pains me to pick against Doo Ho Choi. I like the guy a lot, but I'm going to take Bill Algeo. From the King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. I guess that's a city in Pennsylvania? I don't know. I don't know my Pennsylvanian geography, but we're taking Bill Algeo to beat Doo Ho Choi by unanimous decision. As we go on to the flyweight division, we have got, I believe, one of 3 ranked fighters on this card. The number 15th ranked flyweight in the world, Cody Durden, takes on Bruno Silva in this fight. For Durden, you know what Cody Durden's gonna bring. If you've watched one Cody Durden fight, you've probably got a gist of what happens in pretty much every single Cody Durden fight. Heavy pressure on wrestling. That's what he does. He's a high volume type guy. He's more than willing to wrestle. He's more than willing to, if he misses one shot, he's going to keep shooting, right? Like, you can stuff one, you can stuff two, but again, it's going to be that third, fourth, and fifth that Cody Durden is going to keep on applying. He's always got the foot on the gas pedal, right? Yeah, he got submitted by Tagir Ulanbekov. He got dropped in that fight too, but like, again, Tagir Ulanbekov is supposed to beat Cody Durden, so I'm not, again, concerned at all with that. I'm looking at the fights that he had against JP Bays, Carlos Mota, Charles Johnson, Jake Hadley, right? The Charles Energy Johnson fight keeps on aging better and better. Charles Johnson just beat Josh Van, of all people, last night, right? So Durden, again, you know what he's going to bring. He's going to look to wrestle. Is Bruno Silva ready for that? Right, Bruno Silva hasn't fought in a year and a half right? His last win is a submission victory over Tyson Nam on the Jan Dvalishvili card, where he submitted him in the second round with a rear naked choke. He knocked out Victor Rodriguez before that, and then knocked out JP Bays before that as well. But all three of those guys, you know, not the best names, if we're being honest, right? Like, again, Tyson Nam's no longer in the UFC, right? Bays no longer in the UFC, Victor Rodriguez no longer in the UFC. And now you draw Cody Durden, who is going to pressure you a lot with his wrestling, right? The only guy that has overwhelmed Bruno Silva with his wrestling so far in the UFC has been Tagir Ulanbekov, and Tagir Ulanbekov obviously went out there and really just out-grappled Cody Durden in their fight in December of last year. But it's going to be a clash of styles, right? Like, Bruno Silva, yeah, he can grapple, but for the most part, Bruno Silva will be willing to strike with you. You saw what he did against JP Bays, knocked him down 3 times in 2 rounds, ended up getting the finish in the middle of that second round. Victor Rodriguez knocked him out really early, it only took 60 seconds. The Tyson Nam fight, again, knocked the guy down in that fight, eventually ended up getting the submission in that second round as a result of that knockdown. So obviously, you know, Bruno Silva is not going to be the aggressor when it comes to wrestling. He's going to try to keep this fight standing, while I think, again, Durden is going to come out here with a very wrestling-heavy approach. Again, Bruno Silva trains out of Fight Ready MMA. You know, I wouldn't say they're a wrestling heavy gym, but they've got fighters over there who are going to prep Bruno Silva for a wrestling attack of Durden. But I really like Cody Durden to win this fight. He's just, again, a high octane, very, you know, pressure fighter type wrestler, if that makes sense. Again, Durden is going to be willing to shoot multiple times in this fight. Again, I'll say it all the time about some of these guys, and some of these very good wrestlers like Durden. Again, you can stuff the first takedown, you can stuff the second, you can even stuff the third, but how are you going to deal with the fourth, fifth, and sixth that are going to come your way? Because that's, again, how Durden is going to fight. This guy is a pretty decent gas tank. If Bruno Silva is not able to wobble him on the feet or rock him on the feet like Tagir Ulanbekov was able to do, he's probably not going to win the fight. Durden has looked very good since that Muhammad Mokaev fight. And how did Mokaev beat him, by the way? He knocked him down very early in that fight within the first 10 seconds, ended up getting that fight on the ground and submitting him with a guillotine choke in the first, right? Since then, though, Durden has really settled in as a UFC fighter. Again, 11 takedowns in that win over Charles Johnson back in 2023, 4 against Hadley in his last win before that. I like Durden to win. I like the style. Bruno Silva is going to need to drop Cody Durden, I think, to win this fight, because I think Durden's going to keep coming with his wrestling pace. I think Durden's able to get to the legs and get takedowns. I'm going to take the American Cody Durden to go out here and win this fight by unanimous decision. To the lightweight division, we've got Kurt Holobaugh taking on Kanyan Kruschewsky. I'm gonna butcher his name, but we have Kurt Holobaugh coming back, who's 37 years old, 20-8 professionally, taking on Kanyan in this fight. Again, I butcher his name all the time. Kruschewsky, I don't think there's an N in that. I'm trying my hardest, trust me. Anyways, Holobaugh is 1-5 in the UFC, 1 win over Austin Hubbard to win the Ultimate Fighter. Other than that, it has been L after L after L for Kurt Holobaugh. I understand, again, he's on his second run in the UFC, like we talked about with Cody Gibson earlier, but the track record in the UFC has not been the greatest, and now you're getting a guy here in Kanyan who really doesn't jump off the page for me, per se. I really don't think he does. He got knocked out in his last fight against a very good guy in Elvis Brenner over in Brazil on that Jailton Almeida Derek Lewis card in November of last year. But wins before that, rear naked choke finish over Dylan Mantello before that in the Contender Series. He has experience deep into fights, and he is a guy who seems to get better as the fight does go on, right? Kanyan has had a lot of wars in Jungle Fight, right? He was the Jungle Fight lightweight champion. He ended up winning the belt in the 4th round of the guillotine choke, and then defended his championship in the 5th by getting a stoppage in the 5th round, right? He is well equipped for these type of wars. Kurt Holobaugh, I will probably be trying to strike with him. Like, again, Holobaugh, again, nothing jumps off the page for him either, for me, honestly. Like, both these guys, I'm not impressed too much with either of them. I think Kanyan's better, and that's why I'm going to take him to win the fight. And again, we have not picked a finish so far on this card. I think it's coming right here. I'm going to take Kanyan Kruschewsky, I think. I'm going to take him to win the fight by second round knockout. Again, this is a guy who does get better as the fight goes on. He works the body, he works the leg kicks, and again, he will work up top as well to the head. I just think Kurt Holobaugh is going to have a lot of trouble figuring him out, and I think Kurt Holobaugh is going to have a lot of trouble landing against Kanyan as well. I think Kruschewsky, I don't know. I think, again, I think he's able to win the fight stand-up-wise. I think he's able to get in his face. On the ground, too, I like Kanyan to win this fight as well. I know Kurt Holobaugh has an extensive grappling background, too, and again, he was able to win the Ultimate Fighter by submitting Austin Hubbard by triangle choke in the second. I get that. He got it off his back, too. I understand that. I think Kanyan's better than him on the ground. I think, again, Kurt Holobaugh ran through a fairly easy Ultimate Fighter season. That's what that McGregor-Chandler Ultimate Fighter season was. It was, it was 8. Team Chandler was 8 guys who have fought in the UFC before, and Team McGregor was 8 guys who hadn't fought in the UFC yet. And it turned out, well, hell, all the vets were pretty much better than the guys who hadn't fought in the UFC yet. I believe Chandler's team pitched a shutout for the most part. I think they went 7-1 in the first round. To the point where I think it was Hunter Azure switched to Team Connor in the middle of the season. I really stopped watching the Ultimate Fighter. I just... Like, it's cool, but, like, again, I'll watch the fights when the guys get into the UFC. The Contender Series has kind of just negated to a point the coolness, I guess, the Ultimate Fighter, because I mean the guys on the Ultimate Fighter are literally living in a house, fighting for 8 weeks just to get a shot on a UFC card, right? Like Chael Sonnen used to call it the toughest tournament in all of sports. Well, now you can fight one fight in the Contender Series and get in the UFC instead, right? Like, again, you might as well just fight in the Contender Series. That's why the Ultimate Fighter for me recently has been a little bit hard to get into, because you just wait for the Contender in the fall, and those guys are fighting one fight to get in the UFC, and that's where you can really be impressed by guys. But anyways, Kurt Holobaugh, right? Like, he ran through weak competition, Lee Hammond, Jason Knight, Austin Hubbard, right? Not the best guys. I understand Hubbard's coming off a win over Michael Figlak in his last fight, but still didn't fight the best opponents. He's taken on a guy who can strike and who can grapple to a very well-balanced fighter who is also going to push the pace and just give Kurt Holobaugh a very tough time. I'm taking Kanyan Kruschewsky to win this fight by second round at TKO. The first finish so far on this card. We will see if we get more as we go on to our featured bout here. Steve Garcia taking on Sungwoo Choi. So another Korean fighter on this card. The third one is Sungwoo Choi, who is 11-6 professionally. He is coming off a win over Jarno Aarons, but before that it was a 3-fight losing skid for Sungwoo Choi. Losses to Alex Caceres, Joshua Kalibau, and Michael Trezano. The win again over Jarno Aarons, who was scheduled to fight Morgan Shairi earlier this year, but that fight did get scrapped. Sungwoo Choi withdrew from that fight. I believe, who did Shairi fight in the Apex? Oh God, who was it? It was Shepe Mariscal, where he got robbed and lost by split decision. Yeah, that was bad. But anyways, Sungwoo Choi is fighting Steve Garcia. Garcia's been on a roll, right? And this is a guy who came to the UFC, was 1-2. I wasn't impressed, right? He loses to Violent Bob Ross in his first fight, Luis Pena. He beats Charlian Tavares, who is one of the worst UFC fighters of all time. He loses to Mahashet in Singapore, where he gets knocked down in the first round. You're thinking, okay, I think Chase Hooper is able to break through against him. No, he loses, or Hooper, Garcia beats Hooper, knocks him out in the first, then beats Shailan Nordembeka, who at one point I was very high on, and then beats Melt Costa after that in December of last year. All of a sudden, this guy went from 1-2, beating a very bad UFC fighter and losing to Mahashet and Luis Pena, to beating 3 very capable guys. And now he gets Sungwoo Choi, which feels like a very good fight for him stylistically. I do think it is. Sungwoo Choi leaves his chin up in the air to get hit, right? He beat Jarno Aarons, sure, but Jarno Aarons was able to drop him in that fight. Aarons didn't see the most of success, but he was able to drop Sungwoo Choi in that second round. He made it close. He made it 1-1 going into the third, but Sungwoo Choi pulled away. Michael Trizano was able to drop Sungwoo Choi twice in the span of 5 minutes at UFC 281 before his eventual knockout victory late in that round. Joshua Kalibau was able to drop Sungwoo Choi twice in their fight at UFC 275 over in Singapore, right? Sungwoo Choi gets hit a lot, and he gets hit by big shots too. Guys are able to put this guy down. Steve Garcia will probably be able to do the same thing, because Steve Garcia straight swings. Seriously, this guy straight swings and he goes for it. The Melt Costa fight again, knocks him out in the second, gets the knockdown, finishes on the ground, right? Knocks out Shailan Nordembeka in the second round. Believe that was that was a body shot, but still, again, it takes power to put guys out with shots to the liver. 3 knockdowns in 90 seconds of Chase Hooper back in 2022. I understand that was when Chase Hooper really blocked punches with his face, but still, Hooper's got a chin on him. I watched him fight Alex Caceres, and Garcia put him away in 92 seconds, right? Garcia did get dropped twice by Charlion Tavares back in 2021, which is really weird. That's kind of why, again, I have the whole mindset around Garcia that he wasn't very good, because, yeah, he lost to Pena in Norfolk, and then he beats on Tavares, but he got knocked down twice by Tavares. Yeah, he was winning, but he did get knocked down a couple times in that fight. And he loses to Mahashet very quickly. He gets dropped twice in a minute. But something happened in that Chase Hooper fight, and Garcia's been very good ever since. The guy has looked a lot better since, again, that loss in Singapore to Mahashet. I think he's able to, no pun intended, because Sungwoo Choi's nickname Sting, but I think he's able to sting Sungwoo Choi and knock him out pretty early in this fight. Again, we've been waiting on finishes this entire card. This will be the second of the card. I'm taking Steve Garcia to knock out Sungwoo Choi in the first round. Again, Sungwoo Choi gets hit a lot, and he gets hit very easily. Steve Garcia is going to find a way to hit him, and he's going to put him down early in this fight. Again, I've never been the highest on Steve Garcia. Again, the win over Melt Costa is huge. I've only picked Steve Garcia to win twice in the UFC. I picked him to be on Tavares, and I actually picked him to be Mahashet. I have not picked him since. We are taking him here. I'm taking him to go out there and beat Sungwoo Choi, and I think he gets the knockout in the first round. Give me the mean machine, Steve Garcia, to knock out Sungwoo Choi in the very first round. As we go on to our co-main event, this was the other fight I was kind of split on. Brad Tavares, Jun Young Park. The Iron Turtle in Park, Jun Young Park, coming into this fight with a loss to Andrea Muniz in his last fight. Very close fight, but the decision does go Muniz's way. Muniz gets takedowns, doesn't do much with them, but he's got control in that fight. The third round goes to Jun Young Park. The swing round's the first. It's just, again, how you score it. Park outstrikes Muniz, but Muniz gets him down, but doesn't do anything with the takedown. So, I don't know. I thought Jun Young Park won the fight, but it is what it is. Muniz does win the second, and that's the obvious one. The second and the third are obvious. Second going to Muniz. Third going to Park. The swing is the first. I thought Park won, but it is what it is. Park built up a 4-fight winning streak before that, right? Wins over Eric Anders, Joe Holmes, Dennis Tululin, and Albert Duraev. The Duraev win, very impressive. Was able to go out there and get a submission in the second round. I'll be honest with you, Holmes and Tululin were fights that were definitely set up for him to win. Like, Tululin's still in the UFC, too. He's going to fight Cedricus Dumas in Abu Dhabi next month, which is weird. I thought this guy was out of the UFC by now. But it is what it is. Again, we already talked about that fight when it was originally scheduled to happen 2 months ago in Saudi Arabia. It's going to happen. It's going to finally happen in Abu Dhabi, but it is what it is. Jun Young Park, again, he beat the crap out of Tulin, beat up Holmes, submitted Duraev, had a very close fight with Muniz. He's getting Brad Tavares, who has been in a million fights in the UFC so far, and this will be walk number 25 for Brad Tavares into the UFC octagon. This is a guy, though, who's been in some wars, right? 5 months ago, got into a war with Gregory Rodriguez, ended up losing the fight in the third round by TKO. He beat Chris Weidman, which is good, I guess, right? Lost to Bruno Silva, lost to Dricus Duplessis, beat Omari Akhmedov, beat Antonio Carlos Jr., but again, when he fought those PFL guys, that was 2021. Tavares has 1 win in the last 3 years, but he's still a very tough out. He can strike. He can give you problems on the feet. It's really dependent on if he can keep the fight standing with Jun Young Park, because I think obviously Park has the advantage on the ground. It's just a matter of if Park is able to take Tavares down. Park's got the advantage on the ground. Tavares is the advantage on the feet. Tavares is getting up there in age, 36. Jun Young Park's 33. But my thing with Tavares is he doesn't really get taken down all that much. Chris Weidman tried 8 times, and Tavares stuffed every single one of them, right? Gregory Rodriguez shot 6 times, only got 2, but Tavares got back up to his feet. Rodriguez beat him on the feet. That's where he ended up getting the stoppage, right? Was with his strikes on the feet, not on the ground. Right, Junior Park's last loss before Muniz was the Gregory Rodriguez loss. And again, I know Park was on the losing end of a wrestling heavy attack by Andrea Muniz. It's not going to be something like that in this fight. Again, Junior Park is the better grappler. He's going to be the one pursuing that takedown and trying to get the fight down, trying to get, again, a submission like his 3 straight rear naked choke victories against Holmes, Tulin, and Duraev. But my thing in this fight is Brad Tavares is a very tough guy to take down. Chris Weidman, who again, I understand where Weidman's at this point of his career, but still All-American wrestler Chris Weidman, former UFC champion. I understand that was like 10 years ago at this point, but still, Chris Weidman can still wrestle, and Brad Tavares stuffed all 8 of his takedowns coming his way against Weidman. I understand, again, that was Weidman's first fight after breaking his leg against Uriah Hall, but still, that says something. Tavares doesn't really get taken down. Akhmedov did it a couple times, but Tavares was able to get back up to his feet, and he stuffed 7 of the 9 out of the 9 takedowns. Omari Akhmedov shot on him, right? Tavares was able to beat a very good grappler, Antonio Carlos Jr. Shoeface went 1 for 12 on his takedowns in that fight at UFC 257, right? Like, he is a tough guy to take down. Rodriguez did it twice, but again, Tavares popped back up to his feet, and that was not the reason why Tavares lost that fight. I'm taking Brad Tavares to beat Jun Young Park. I don't think Jun Young Park takes him down. I just don't think so. I think Tavares' defensive wrestling games, that is just good enough to keep the fight standing. And I think Tavares is able to keep it striking, and I think he wins the decision here. Again, this might be the unpopular pick. Tavares is a plus 155 dog on Tapology. 85% of voters are going with the Iron Turtle, Jun Young Park. 15% going with Brad Tavares. I will join that 15%, and I'm going to take Brad Tavares to win the fight. Defensive wrestling is going to be huge in this fight. As long as Tavares is able to keep his back off of the fence and off the mat too, I think he's able to win. I'm going to take Brad Tavares to win this fight by decision. If Tavares is able to keep the fight on the feet, I think he is the better striker, and I think he can go out there and outstrike Jun Young Park. I think he's able to make it not a crazy fight per se, but I think he's able to get in Park's face and make him exchange with him. Gregory Rodriguez made Jun Young Park do that, and Jun Young Park got knocked out in that fight. I'm taking Brad Tavares to go out there and win this fight by unanimous decision. Again, this was the other fight I was split on. I'm going to take Tavares in this one. I'm taking him by unanimous decision. To our main event. Oh, my face cam is gone. I don't know why, but I will put it back right now. Amanda Lemos versus Virna Jandiroba. Now, again, shout out to the UFC. The poster for this fight was actually really good. It's just, some of the UFC posters nowadays are horrible. This one was actually really good. The main event itself, it's a ranked 115 fight. Yeah, it's such an apex main event. This is going to be Amanda Lemos' 3rd UFC main event. She's 1-1 in main events so far, right? Her first one being the standing arm triangle choke in the first round loss to Jessica Andrade. The next one being that knockout victory over Marina Rodriguez. Now, again, Amanda Lemos main events have given us 2 finishes, which is good. So hopefully we get a finish in this fight. I don't know. But Lemos did impress me in her last fight against Mackenzie Dern. She actually did, right? Again, you know what Mackenzie Dern's going to bring. But Lemos was able to keep the fight off the ground for the most part, and she was able to knock down Dern in the second, and she was able to just, again, outstrike Dern without giving herself up for a takedown. I was impressed, actually, with Amanda Lemos in her last fight. Again, she looked horrible in the Zhang Weili fight. She got completely shut out in that championship fight in, I believe, August or September. Now she gets Virna Jandiroba, who is on a 3-fight winning streak. Jandiroba's not the most exciting fighter. She hasn't gotten a finish in the UFC since her 3rd fight in the promotion, where she beat Felice Herrig at UFC 252, Miocic Cormier 3. She beat her by armbar. She got in a finish against Kanako Maruta, didn't she? Yeah, she did. Wasn't that a doctor stoppage, though? I think it was. Yeah, it was an arm injury by Maruta. But the last time, really, that Jandiroba was able to get a finish, it was that Felice Herrig fight. I'm not all that impressed with Jandiroba. Okay, she beats Angela Hill. All right. She beats Marina Rodriguez, whose wrestling lacks sometimes, and who has lost 3 of 4. And she beat Lupi Godinez, which sure is good. I don't know. She beats Godinez. The fight's not that great. I see why she won, but it was not impressive at all. And again, the thing that I've always had with Virna Jandiroba, especially when she's gotten her little run here, is that when she fights these better fighters, she is going to lose. again, I don't think Amanda Lemos is like, you know, championship caliber. She's obviously not. Again, we saw her fight for the belt and she got destroyed. But I do think she's actually miles better than Vina Jandiroba. I'm willing to say that. I legitimately think she is. I think Lemos is a lot better than Jandiroba. Jandiroba is going, you know, if she doesn't get a takedown in this fight, she's screwed. I don't think she's the best wrestler. She went 2 for 9 on takedowns against Godinez, right? She got them, but still, like, she went 3 for 7 against Marina Rodriguez, and again, it only takes 1, but sure, like, I'm not impressed with the wrestling game. She's been able to beat up on fighters, and like, Godinez is not a bad wrestler, but still, she's been able to beat up on lower fighters in the top 15, fighters who are in that, you know, 8 to 15-ish range, 8 to 20-ish range, and she's been able to out-grapple them. Yeah, I think Lemos is good enough, though, to keep the fight standing, and I think she's good enough to, you know, stuff those takedowns. I think she is. I'm taking Lemos to win, because, again, if she's able to stuff takedowns like I am anticipating her to do so, I think this is very one-sided on the feet, and I think it's just, again, a matter of time before Lemos gets that stoppage. I'm taking Amanda Lemos to win the fight by 4th round TKO. That's my pick. I'm taking 4th round TKO here for Amanda Lemos. I think it's kind of similar to that Marina Rodriguez fight in terms of Lemos is kind of just waiting for that big shot. Like, she's winning on the feet. You know, she's kind of controlling the pace. She's the one kind of, you know, she's the one dictating where the fight is. Obviously, Jandiroba is going to shoot for some takedowns, but I think if Lemos is able to stuff a couple, then she's going to be able to really dictate how the fight does play out. So I think it's kind of similar to that, where she's kind of just waiting and she finds her spot, she picks it. Again, I think it will be just, you know, Lemos going to work that jab. I think she's going to, you know, stay in front the entire fight, and then eventually, again, it'll be kind of just, you know, Jandiroba's wilting some, and again, then Lemos jumps on in the 4th round and gets that finish. That's kind of how I see this fight playing out. I'll be honest with you, this is one of the more poor main events that the UFC's put on. I get their top 5 fighters, but seriously, where's the winner of this fight go? Both these fighters are getting up there in age. Jandiroba is 36, Lemos is 37. The loser of this fight will never fight for the championship ever again. The winner of this fight will remain in the conversation. Now, the winner of this fight will not be fighting for a belt next. It has to be Tatiana Suarez, but I will say the winner of this fight should be fighting Yan Zhannao, and I think that's the next fight for the winner of this fight. And I'll make the case that the loser maybe fights Jessica Andrade, just because there are not many top contenders at 115. So actually, maybe the way this division is, maybe the loser actually could fight for the belt sometime. I don't know. It would probably take a dominant run by Zhang Weili. I don't think she gets by Tatiana Suarez, but I don't know. The winner of this fight should fight Yan Zhannao. Yan Zhannao was competitive enough in her fight at UFC 300 against Zhang Weili, so she should be kind of back in it for a title shot. So I'd say the winner of this fight should be in a title eliminator against Yan Zhannao, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, no, Andrade is fighting Natalia Silva, so that's exciting. But that's at 125, though, so it's not 115. I don't know. I'm taking Lemos to win, though. Again, if Jandiroba can't get a takedown, which I don't think she's able to, she's screwed, so we're going to say she's screwed. I'm taking Lemos to win the fight. Give me Amanda Lemos to win the fight by 4th round TKO, and folks, that'll do it for UFC Fight Night. Lemos versus Jandiroba predictions, and also, I don't know why Lemos is an underdog in this fight. I personally hate betting on women's MMA, but I really like Lemos to win this fight. Again, it's women's MMA. Anything can happen. It's the reason why I didn't say Miranda Maverick was a lock on this card. But again, I really think Lemos wins this fight. I really do think. I don't think Jandiroba is I don't think she's the caliber of wrestler that Zhang Weili is. That, you know, again, Zhang Weili dominated Lemos on the ground, but I don't think Jandiroba's on that level of wrestling and control. I think Lemos is able to win the fight. And again, Jandiroba is a sitting duck on the feet against Lemos in this fight, and that's where I anticipate this fight going. So, folks, thank you all for watching again our Lemos and Jandiroba full card predictions here on the channel. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back next week for UFC 304. Bilal Muhammad and Leon Edwards 2 for the welterweight championship, and for the interim heavyweight championship, the rematch, Curtis Blades and the champion, probably should be the undisputed champion, Tommy Aspinall. I'm so excited for that card next week in Manchester, England. But, folks, I'll see y'all next Sunday for that. Folks, thank you all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba, forever.